Good evening, folks, and welcome to Marion County Hardball. Today, we're here with Michael Burnette, who's running for sheriff of Marion County. I want to remind you all that if you are running for office, we don't care what party you're running for. If you would like to come on Marion County Hardball, we would like to put you on and interview you. So please message me at the Marion County Messenger. And with that, I will kick off to Rurik.
First of all, Michael, I want to thank you for being willing to run for sheriff. But the question I've got to ask you is, why are you wanting to run for sheriff? And what do you think, coming to the area, this is a two-part question, what do you see as the bigger problems right now with the state of the Sheriff's Department?
Is that fair to ask a two-part question like that?
Well, I figured that one would tie into the other.
Oh, good point. So I came here 4 years ago, and people that knew me almost every year have asked if I would run for sheriff. It would either be groups of people or like the women's Republican group or the Republican Party just most recently, or just people that I knew, friends and some locals that I got to know and stuff like that. And I kind of said no, I was going to stay retired and everything, and I trade stocks, right? And I figured I'd just do that. Well, most recently, and the third year I started praying on it. Okay. Asking, because like every career I've had, I pretty much I knew I was going to end up doing it because I knew God wanted me to do certain things, and we don't go into it, but certain signs that told me like I was going to do something. And so I started praying on it, and I got my answers, and I said, all right, I'll do it, because that's what he wants me to do. Mm-hmm. I had heard about complaints and indictments and federal charges and stuff, and I've heard it through various people in all the communities here, because I've gotten to know people in various places and stuff. And at the request of, you and the Republican Party, I decided that I would run, because I think that these complaints and stuff, they need to be addressed. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's specific ways to address these complaints and these happenings to stop them. Mm-hmm. And it boils down to leadership and training, and that's basically what my philosophy is in life, was with professional careers, is leadership and training.
Why don't you real quick go over your background, kind of give us an idea what qualifications you have to be the sheriff of Marion County.
Sure. So my leadership comes from the military, and specifically, I came off the streets, so to speak, as high school, and I went into a Special Forces baby program, and I ended up going that route. I went into Special Forces, and that experience is unique in the sense that it's not like conventional military. Conventional military are units that fight wars. Mm-hmm. Okay, so your infantry, your artillery, and then your logistical units to support them, and they support wars. That's their main job. Special Forces, our nickname is the Green Beret. Our job is to prevent wars in the sense of train other armies to fight their own wars. Mm-hmm. So just as Vietnam was going on, John F. Kennedy literally invented us. Okay, mm-hmm. And our job was to train the indigenous forces to fight the wars on their own without the need for the U.S. to send in conventional guys to fight the wars and stuff. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. So we have to learn to interact with the community. We have to learn how to meld in with the local communities and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
build hearts and minds kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Most recent example was Afghanistan. As soon as the towers went down, the only unit that went in there was one team originally, and then a few more teams ended up being a company of Special Forces guys from 5th Special Forces Group from Campbell, Kentucky. And those guys, with the help of the indigenous forces, completely wiped out the Taliban government
Mm-hmm.
and took the country down. Okay, that's what our job was. Okay, so we do that through working with the community. So as a sheriff, you're no different. You have to be able to work with the community, know the community's strengths and weaknesses, know what their desires are, and it's pretty much universal throughout the world what the desires are and stuff.
Now you were a major, you were an XO.
Right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the schooling you did as an officer in the military?
Sure. So basically, you start out as a lieutenant and you learn how to manage and lead a small group of men or women or whatever your troops are of about 30 personnel or so, right? And then you advance up to a company commander, and that company commander in a conventional force is more, but on a special forces level as a lieutenant, in the early days, I was assistant team leader, so we had 12 guys, okay? And then when I became a captain, I became a team leader, which I had 12 guys, 9 to 12 guys, okay? Then as I promoted up, I ended up being a company commander, and at one point I had 130 personnel, and then I went into battalion operations officer, where I was running the operations for the battalion, okay?
So really what I'm hearing is you have no problem as far as managing a department is not an issue for you at all.
Absolutely not. In fact, I was up for battalion command.
Okay.
I was being recommended to take a battalion, and that is equivalent to a department, a police department, which where I came from was over 200 officers, sworn officers, not counting the civilian personnel that we had for other jobs.
Let's go a little bit more granular. As far as the type of training that you received outside of combat arms and things of that nature, was there any type of psychological warfare type training you've gone through? What type of stuff like that have you been through?
Yes, so at one point I was a company commander for a tactical psychological operations company, and so prior to taking that command, I went to school to receive a training on psychological operations, and then later on I became a company commander for a company, and then I became a strategic planner in a production development center. Okay, and so my job was to develop psychological themes to help further the U.S. objectives in certain areas.
So you're trying to get into the brain of the enemy, so to speak.
Not the enemy so much, but the populace.
The populace, okay.
Yeah, to help the populace understand why we're there, to flip them against our enemy. So in this case, it was Al Qaeda, Taliban, Iraqi, Republican Guard, that kind of thing.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, I thought I saw something on you that you got the Bronze Star. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did to be awarded the Bronze Star?
It was for leadership in combat. That's just, yeah.
So it was something heroic you did in combat.
No. Just leadership in combat.
Leadership in combat.
Yeah. Okay. There's guys out there that have.
I understand.
They've done a lot more than I did.
Okay. So you've already detailed some of the things. There is obviously some things that are going on in the Drug Task Force and so on. And what I hear you saying is with your leadership skills, you can cure a lot of these problems. Just from leadership, primarily, that's what's lacking. Because I don't think officers would be getting in trouble if there was a real strong leadership presence. I mean, I'm sure you got bad officers, but for the most part, I think if you have 4 officers that are in trouble, then there might be a leadership problem. Do you agree with that?
I'd say it's there. That's a potential, right? So it's like I don't know the personalities here, right? I've met Bo, and I personally have respect for Bo because Bo never met me before, and I had the honor to him and Moby, right? Great,
good
my
people.
opinion, good people, right? And when I first came here, I just retired and stuff, and I've been a firearms guy my whole life. I mean, when I say firearms guy, I mean a trainer since the age of 20 and stuff. And I was a big trainer in my police department with some of my other guys. And when I came here, I talked to Moby. I said, "Hey, I want to help." You know, same thing with Jordan in South Pitt and stuff. I want to help train you guys and stuff. I knew that they were transitioning to optics from iron sights, and my department finally did that about 10 years ago. So there's knowledge base that I have that I could share, and I wanted to share it. So Moby asked me for my qualifications, and I sent him the stuff, and he said, "Sure, come out and help." And so for 2 years, I had the honor to actually help with the Marion County's sheriff's qualifications and stuff, and it was awesome. I got to see the guys and the people. It was great time for me, and it was good. Well, the first year I was there, Bo comes down, and I don't know Bo. I've never seen him, right? But just by the look of his presence, I'm like, that's got to be the sheriff. And so I went over and introduced myself, and I told him, "Hey, we might be kin." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, you don't have an E, and I do." And I told him a story about how I think that there's a potential by it. And he kind of laughed at it. And he goes, "Let me ask you a question. What do you think of this range?" And I'm like, "You serious?" And he's like, "Yeah." Now, he doesn't know me from anything, right? But I think he could tell by just the equipment I had on that I was a shooter, okay? So I think, that's an assumption on my part, because I don't think a sheriff or chief would just go to some random guy and say, "What do you think?" So I said, "Well, honestly, I think it sucks." And he's like, "Why?" And I go, and just at that moment, when I said that, I go, "Look at your targets." And as he looked, the dump truck goes by. The garbage truck goes by. And I go, "Right there." And you can see the driver. I go, "It's dangerous. It can kill, people and stuff." And he goes, "You know what? I agree with you." He goes, "What would you do?" And I go, "Well, if this is my only area," because I don't know the area, but if this was my only area, and I looked out to all these trees, the opposite end, I said, "I heard that's a swamp, but if that area is clear for like a mile, and there's no way nobody can come in and stuff from any angles, and all those thick trees and everything, then I would build a berm this direction and shoot this way. And I wouldn't use target traps or bullet traps, because you have guys who are transitioning from one to another, and when they transition left or right, they're at an angle. And a bullet trap is designed for one way. And if a round hits it sideways, there's a potential of actually penetrating that metal, which creates another hazard. And he thanked me for my opinion, and that's kudos to him, because like I say, he doesn't know me. So to answer your question, yes, leadership, I would go to leadership first, but I don't know Bo, so there's other factors I'm sure that are there, but I do know that leadership can help resolve issues in a more spherical manner, if that makes sense.
And you not being from here as well, you don't have any of these relationship you have family ties, but they're distant family ties that are from here. Why don't you real quick, you haven't mentioned anything about, you had 20 years in the military of honorable service. Then you also had 20 years as a police officer.
I did.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so when I left the military, I had two roads I was going to take, because I was in a hostage rescue team in Special Forces, and I wanted to continue that. And so I applied for the FBI because I had HRT guys at the time, I don't remember his name, was kind of recruiting me, and Vancouver Police had an application, or was open at the same time. Well, Vancouver hired me before HRT, and so I went with that route, and HRT later called me, and it's like, "I'm sorry, it's too late." So I went off to Vancouver. I worked 19 years on graveyard shift. I volunteered to stay on graveyard shift practically my entire career because I wanted to apply my knowledge of tactics as a special forces guy in law enforcement. So I could basically sneak around at night, use the shadows to my advantage, you know, that kind of thing. Our police vehicles are black and white. So it helped me with the hiding in locations to watch things. I'm a proactive guy. I loved going out and looking for crime and stuff. And there were times that we actually kept stats. We were mandated to keep stats. And there were times that I had the most proactive arrests and stuff because I enjoyed doing it. So I worked that. Then my last year I did day shift to try to transition over to normal human hours, so to speak.
So you had 20 years military and then 20 years again with the police force.
Right. Yes.
Okay. I think some of the concerns that I could hear the public now asking, they don't want a SWAT sheriff, right? They want to have a sheriff that isn't necessarily more people orientated. Can you kind of understand where folks would be a little alarmed? Oh God, got this military guy here. How do you address that?
Absolutely. I wanted to address that. I heard rumors of, I'm not gonna give any names, but a friend thinking that I was too military, and I totally understand that. But there's one thing that everyone has to understand. Okay, is a police force by nature is paramilitary, okay? And it has to be, all right? You have a chain of command, and when that chain of command is not present, or when that chain of command is blurred, it creates issues. Because when a cop goes to an academy to train and stuff, that academy, most academies are paramilitary already. They want to do physical training, they have regimented schedules, you got to keep your boots shined. You have to have a squared away uniform. That in and itself is a military unit. Okay. The other point with this is the reason why the military is good at what it does. It is the longest standing organization in the United States leadership wise. It has done everything, failed at stuff, succeeded at stuff, lessons learned to teach good leadership. Now it's up to the person to apply those things, of course, but it is the one organization in the United States, in the history of the United States, that is the longest standing organization to actually experiment with leadership and followership and stuff. And the thing it teaches is you got to be a good follower to be a good leader, right? You can't lead without being a follower. So as far as the military aspect is concerned, absolutely. But it's not military in the sense of, listen, you're going to do what I'm telling you to, blah, that kind of stuff. It's not that. It's the discipline, it's the loyalty to duty, to your community, those kind of things. That's militaristic in a sense. It's also training, taking training seriously, because like it or not, a cop is in a semi-permissive environment as soon as they put on that uniform. Okay, there's three kinds of environments. And we learn this in Special Forces, so sometimes we have to operate in plain clothes. Okay? You have permissive, semi-permissive, and non-permissive. You and I can go down to any town, USA, right? And it's a permissive environment, okay? But the minute we put on a uniform, it's a semi-permissive environment because there are people there that want to kill you, and there are people that are not. And there are some neighborhoods in some states and cities that you go into, they want to kill you, period. Okay? So the cop has to understand that, and that is part of a military discipline as well. Just because I'm in a non-permissive or semi-permissive state does not allow me to sit here and just walk around with my gun drawn. Right? But I have to read my environment. I have to be able to communicate my intent or what my objective is to people so that they understand and try to get compliance through that way without force. So in that sense, absolutely, it's necessary. And as far as the SWAT guy is concerned, I wasn't on SWAT, civilian SWAT. I was a hostage rescue guy.
Okay.
But that is important because I've seen leaders of SWAT teams. So where I came from, you had someone who's in charge of a SWAT team who's never been in SWAT. Okay? Making decisions for SWAT teams that shouldn't be made and stuff. So it's important for the leadership. If I have a leader that's above me that doesn't know certain elements, then there's a problem there. So he better be well versed to be able to accept my opinion or my expertise in guidance or suggestions, and then go, okay, you know what, that's not my area, but I'm going to go with it because this is my expert, so to speak.
All right, let's move over into the policy side of the house. And the first one that I came up with was moonlighting policies. Should deputies be required to disclose all secondary employment, even if unrelated to law enforcement? Yes or no?
Yes.
And why?
There's liability there. Okay, and the officers have to understand that. I totally get moonlighting, right? Or let's just not call it moonlighting. Let's call it secondary employment for overtime. Okay, I totally understand that. We all have needs, and sometimes pay, which I hope we'll address later, doesn't satisfy what your needs are for your family, and stuff like that. So secondary jobs are okay, but the line is when those jobs mirror enforcement, law enforcement. Okay, there's several problems with that. One of them is if I have an officer or a deputy in this case, and he's pulling security somewhere, and he's an armed security guard, armed or not, he's a security guard, and he comes across something where he feels he needs to take action, but maybe the company doesn't want him to take action. Okay, but he takes action. Well, all of a sudden he's in liability with that company, all right, and that's going to take him through civil litigation, possibly criminal court, and that takes him off the streets for me. Yeah. So it takes my manpower away. Okay. Then there's the flip side of it. If he is armed and he gets into a shooting, okay, well, definitely civil liability, civil court, criminal court. He is off the road, and I again lost manpower for that.
No, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Should a deputy be banned from working security for businesses?
Yeah, I just covered it. Yeah.
Regulated by the sheriff's office, like cannabis dispensaries, bars? Should he be in that capacity?
No security. That's what absolutely not.
Okay.
No, and because of liability issues and the potential of, well, actually, you know what? As a PSYOP commander, I had, for the first time in my life, I had female soldiers and male soldiers. And I never had this issue as a special forces guy, because it was all guys, right? Yeah. But there was potential of males and females doing males and females things in the war zone, right? And more importantly, females and foreign soldiers. So next to me, I had Czech special forces guys. Okay, and they kept wanting to interfere with my female soldiers. And the problem is, as I talk to them, is if one of them gets pregnant, they leave the combat zone, and I lose my combat power. All right, and if my male soldiers and my female soldiers, same thing. So it's kind of no different.
I think you brought up a good point about pay as well. I know one of the sheriff deputies told me at the pendulum of his career, which I think he had said he was there for 32 years, that his top pay would be $54,000. And it just made me realize, I know that the current sheriff has said that he had tried to get pay raises in the past. Now, in the commissioner's capacity, it probably went through the finance committee, because I know it's real important that we pay our officers properly. So the moonlighting, or excuse me, what did you call it? Not moonlighting. Overtime, that's not such a critical need. But like you, I think it's important if you got to make money to raise your family, you got to do whatever it is. Should your outside work be capped at 20 hours a week to prevent fatigue?
That would be a little difficult, I'd say.
You think so?
Yeah, simply because everyone's a little different. Okay, as far, like, I worked graveyard my whole life, and I have no problems with my graveyard hours.
Okay.
But I had partners on my squad that would eventually have to leave because it was getting to them and stuff. Okay, so everybody's a little different, and I would have to see how that is working out with the department as a whole and stuff. And my leadership, there is no universal, hey, we're doing this, done deal, okay? It's no different than being on a team, right? It's a discussion. It's looking at different courses of action and deciding which is the best, okay? And then everyone is in agreement or at least an understanding as to why we came to that decision, kind of thing. You may not totally agree with it, but you'll understand why we're there, okay? So it would depend on the situation and how it's affecting the department. And more importantly, how is that officer on the road? Because what's most important above all other things is they need to go home to their family at the end of the day or the end of the night. That's it.
Should deputies be allowed to work for private companies that might be, let's say, requesting permitting, for instance, for the county for, I don't know, like a building permit or any type of permitting? Does it create a conflict of interest, so to speak? Let's say if we had one of your officers was working for a contractor that was pending a big contract with the county. Would that be appropriate? Or let's say you have a sheriff deputy that's working for a developer, for instance, that is currently developing a subdivision. Would that really be appropriate?
Well, honestly, that would have to do with what his job is. What is his job?
Well,
if he's laying concrete for anybody and it's not affecting his duties, I don't see any issue with that. If he's pulling security or he's in some kind of advisement role, I don't know how to be advisor, but something like that, that would be a no-go simply because it would interfere with the duties, his primary duty, which is that as a deputy and,
well, I think the
enforcing law.
Perception is reality from the public. So if you've got a company that's hiring a bunch of sheriff deputies, to work part-time for them, you start going, what's going on there exactly?
What are they doing though?
Well, if they're doing security.
Oh, it's that right there would be a general order that you're not pulling security.
Yeah.
So
you can do anything else but security because you don't uniform again.
Because again, the liability issues.
So, question, and I know you've been in law enforcement in Vancouver, a lot of difference between Vancouver and Marion County. What do you think would be your biggest issue in law enforcement in Marion? What do you think you're going to be dealing with most, and how do you plan on dealing with it?
There's not a lot of difference between Clark County, where I came from, and here. I mean, I haven't looked at stats. It's hard to find stats, but I can pretty much make a safe assumption the number one issue in this county would be domestic violence. I would say probably the second biggest issue would be drugs, and it's probably methamphetamines. I don't think heroin as much, but probably methamphetamines. I don't think fentanyl either, just because you're a little further away from the border and stuff like that. So I would say that the number one drug issue would be methamphetamines.
Yes.
And I would think another one, it's not necessarily this county's issue, but you are in a high hub area, is sex trafficking. And we had a sex trafficking issue there in Vancouver. And I think those are the biggest issues here. And you would deal with those issues the same way we deal with them in Vancouver and Clark County and other places, by attacking the problem head on.
But one thing I do want to, for the listeners out there, one of the things that you will push for is to get a wage that's competitive with the other counties that are closest, like Hamilton County, because we shouldn't be losing officers from Marion County to Hamilton County because of money.
No.
So you would agree that you would push for pay raises for absolutely.
There's a thing called comps, right? And I haven't gotten a firm answer, so I don't know if there's a union, if the deputies are unionized or the officers in the cities are unionized. I kind of, in a way, I hope they are. But cops are, when every year, when whether it's fiscal or calendar year rolls around, there is the unions, start talking about bidding for incentives, like your medical or whatever. One of them is comps. So you would look at the comparable size city and see what their pay is in the state, and then you would try to match that at a minimum, and stuff. And I've heard a various range of salaries from $29,000, $34,000, up to $54,000, and there's automatic issues with that. And if the rumors are true about selling drugs and stuff like that, you're creating your own problem, So yeah, I would definitely be fighting to, and I don't know what's happened in the past. I can't say anything about that, but I would definitely be fighting for increase of pay, comparable with cost of living and inflation and all those other things, because those are important things. You got to support the family. If the family's not supported, that officer can't do his job.
If so, and circling back to the question about having officers working, let's say, for a private company, if the pay came from the company to the sheriff's department, that would be okay, right? Because then, in other words, if I have a company here and I ask candidate Sheriff Burnette, hey, I need security, I need officers out here for an event that I'm doing, I'm going to pay the sheriff's department. I don't pay your officer. I go directly to your department. Would that work?
Now I know that organizations, like we would have DUI enforcement, and that would be a grant. And that grant came from organizations that donated money to, like Nesta, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, that DARE, that kind of stuff. They would contribute to this, and the monies would come to us, and then we'd pay that overtime. So it didn't come out of our salary. Now, that being said, an entity, you're talking about a single person entity?
No, let's say company.
A company. I can't answer that. I would have to look at legalities of that specifically, but more importantly, again, addressing the security thing, they wouldn't be doing security in the first place.
No, they'd be there as a law enforcement officer.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. No, they wouldn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I can't have deputies pulling security for an entity because of liability issues.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha. All right, we're going to go to Hatch Act compliance. Should deputies in federally funded roles be completely banned from partisan political activities, campaigning, endorsing candidates? Yes or no?
Yes.
Should the annual Hatch Act training be mandatory for all staff, not just federally funded employees?
Yes, and it can also be addressed. That kind of takes me by surprise. I thought it was my assumptions that every department, whether it be local or federal, has pretty much a policy in place where you, on duty, in uniform, cannot talk about politics to anybody. You can't give your personal views and stuff like that. And
in uniform.
In uniform.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. The military, uniform or not military, right? You can't be doing it.
No, that's
period.
right.
There's many people getting in trouble for that of all ranks and stuff and things. And as a civil law enforcement officer, absolutely not. If the policy isn't currently in place, it would be for obvious reasons.
So I understand that. So if a police officer is in uniform, there's absolutely no political, you can't talk politics.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Let's move on to conflict of interest safeguards. Should deputies be prohibited from accepting gifts, including meals or tickets, from business lobbyists with county contracts?
Well, let's just put it back Forget the kind of contract part and just make it a generalized statement. No. So when I first got to Vancouver, right, it was acceptable for like us to go to the local coffee shop, and they're like, hey, this person paid for it, etc. And it was perfectly acceptable. And it sounds like a great thing. But then it got twisted by, lack of a better term, lobbyists started doing things. And then they would bring it up that they did things for these officers. And then it started looking bad for the department. So the department put a squash to it. We can no longer accept gratuity in any form, shape, or manner at any given time while we're in uniform. And just let the person know or whatever, thank you, we appreciate it. But put it on the department. The department doesn't allow me to do this. So it would be the same.
Should deputies be required to recuse themselves from cases involving family members or personal financial ties? Yes or no?
Yes.
They should.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. So in other words, if that's my cousin and I'm involved with it. Yeah.
I've had several cases when I was a patrol officer. In fact, really good friend, right? A few times, because I didn't go, alleged domestic violence issues. Okay? So as soon as I saw the address and I saw the name on the call, I would call up my supervisor and say, hey, even though it's in my beat, I'd say, hey, I can't go to this because I know this individual very well and the spouse, and I can't get in there because there's a bias that can influence my decisions. And so they would send other people. Now, if life was in danger, different story. Yeah. But outside of that, absolutely not.
So I think you're also saying that any conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest, you definitely would steer your officers away from.
Yeah, it also protects them.
Yeah, well, it's also for the public trust too, so it makes a lot of sense. Public controversy mitigation. Should deputies face discipline for off-duty social media posts that could damage the public trust? Racist remarks, extremist symbols, things of that nature.
Yeah, I figure that's pretty much the norm nowadays. It has been for actually 2 decades that I know of. The whole time I was a police officer.
So as far as monitoring their social media feeds, is that something that you would support?
Monitoring, that's a problem. So, like, the military doesn't specifically monitor the social media accounts, but if they get wind of something, and trust me, someone's going to tell someone. And it's going to get out there, especially nowadays with media, social media. So, I would steer away from the department personally monitoring something like that.
Case by case,
yeah,
to your attention.
Yeah, I mean, there's like
should
Constitution in there, so.
Should deputies be fired if arrested for off-duty misconduct? Is that DUI or domestic abuse?
Okay, well, those are 2 different things, right? So domestic violence cases, all right, there are certain laws that govern that whole thing, all right? And there are cases where they're not allowed to carry a gun anymore. So if that is the case, if that officer fell into that case, there's no choice. You would have to, unless you want to be, I don't know if they have them, they're called personnel service technicians, civilians that would take cold reports that have no evidence or whatever, unless they want to do something like that. As far as DUI is concerned, I would agree, yes, but also there's mitigating circumstances, in a sense. All right, so there's a thing, you have to look at things on a case by case, because it can't cookie cutter things. Yeah. Right? Right. So a good example, let's use an example. So a couple is out and they're having dinner with friends, and they have a few glasses of wine or drinks, whatever. And suddenly the spouse goes down and has to get to the hospital. and they take them off in the ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other spouse, who is the law enforcement officer, in all worry, takes off after him and gets pulled over and is a DUI, but they're not like extreme DUI. They're like just barely over .08 or whatever. Okay, so yeah, they have to go through the cases, the case, and whatever the judge and the lawyers come up with is whatever they come up with. Now, if he gets charged with a misdemeanor crime, okay, there's a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there's not anything that I can do about that.
Right.
All right.
Right.
But if they reduce it down to something, because like it's his first time and it was mitigating circumstances, stuff like that, things like that, then I would say there's a potential they keep their job under probation, so to speak. So like I said, I can't cookie cutter it.
Okay. So what do you think about having deputies that may have a desire to run for a commissionership?
That goes in line with you're a police officer and then you want to run for political office. That's a no-go. You're a police officer, period. Because there could be a conflict of interest in that. What if something comes across the commissioners that is a benefit for the department, but the commissioners may think it's not. But here he is saying, so he's going to vote positive for the department, so to speak, right? So that's a benefit to the department. But in general, it's a conflict of interest, and vice versa. So back to what we talked about before, when you're a law enforcement officer, that's what you are, period. If you choose, and don't you get paid as a commissioner?
Some of them do, yeah.
Okay. That's a secondary job, and there's a conflict of interest with that, so that would be a no-go. So that would go with the off-duty policy.
Now, how would you, in the state of Tennessee, a police officer is even though one would think that he's holding an office because they do take an oath of office. The state of Tennessee, it's permissible for a deputy sheriff to run. So you would legally discourage that, is what I think I hear you saying.
Yeah, I would put in place what's called a general order that lays out what kind of off-duty employment you can have, kind of things. And in general, it would be that something that's just not going to create a liability to the department or conflict of interest. So there's politics, there's security. Well, politics, security are the two main ones.
I think what's happened in the past, there's a little phrase that they have to say about their having to abstain from voting on anything related to the budget or finance for the sheriff's department. And they abstain typically from it. But I think...
Well, that takes voting power away.
Yeah.
So again, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's actually been more beneficial. And if that becomes a sore spot with people as far as deputies are concerned, they have to look at it a different way. And that different way is we exist to serve the community. Now, when I say serve the community, where I came from can take it to extreme where we're actually babysitting their kids. The parents can't discipline the child. They call in police officers. The police officers try to discipline the child. No. But what I'm referring to is you serve the community for their best interest, okay? And the best interest is what is happening at that moment. But the community is the police, okay? So the community wants to be represented in the city government, and they want the best for their officers and their deputies,
right?
For both police departments and for the sheriff's office, because ultimately we're all one community. And if the sheriff's department or the city police cannot do their jobs, then the public's not protected. And so it's a symbiotic relationship. So if I have deputies that are sitting on a commission board and have to abstain from a vote that could potentially be a benefit for the sheriff's office, which inevitably is a benefit for the community, then they just negated the whole process.
No, I hear what you're saying. Tell me, and this was going back probably a month or so ago, I remember you mentioning something, it wasn't Blue Heart, it was something about that as a police officer that if you see a situation where someone is violating the law, I mean, it's like speeding or something of that nature, but there's a circumstance behind it. What you didn't call it?
Blue courage.
Blue courage. Yeah. Can you kind of go over that a little bit?
Yeah, blue courage is morality. Okay, so law is black and white. Okay, and certain laws, there's a little leeway in a sense of rules of the road. That's okay. I'm not talking felony crimes, those things. Though the rules of the road are like speeding, stop sign, stop light, tail lights, brake lights, etc., etc. Blue courage is when an officer comes across a situation and has the leeway to let off with a warning, to educate someone on something, they take that kind of action versus enforcement action. Because the importance of that is that helps build confidence in the department. It helps show the public that there's actual care in the job that they're doing. And a lot of times the public is ignorant in certain things because things aren't like taught in driving school anymore or things like that. And so they're educated in the process and they're thankful for it. So blue courage is all about doing the right thing while enforcing the law.
What would you, as far as a training budget for your officers, for instance, the First Amendment, knowing the 5 elements of the First Amendment, and or understanding, which I know these are two kind of separate things. Well, let's focus on the First Amendment aspect of it. I think that a lot of our officers, if training was available to get them to be more knowledgeable on the laws, is that something that you would in a big way promote so that we don't get into these circumstances where we're violating someone's free speech, at a given event, or that we do something that gets us into hot water with the federal government from a civil perspective?
Oh, absolutely. There's mandatory training, and I don't know what goes on here, but there should be mandatory training, and there probably is. There's some federal mandated things as well as local, or should be, and then there's other kind of training that should be implemented. So, and what I'm referring to is you have to know DV laws, all right? And those DV, domestic violence. I'm sorry, domestic violence. Sorry for using acronyms. Domestic violence, and domestic violence should be taught on a regular basis to remind deputies, okay, these are the elements, and to know the victim mindset, because one of the hardest crimes to determine if something's been violated is knowing the victim, because victims will actually hide things and stuff. So you have to be able to discern around that. Okay. As far as the Constitution, so all of that needs to be taught so they understand that the right to assembly exists. Like I came from Vancouver, Washington, right across the river from Portland, Oregon, and we all know what's going on there. But what you don't know is all the stuff that happened during that time frame and all the things that we couldn't do even though we wanted to. Okay, so that freedom of assembly, we allowed that. We just stood guard, and even though they were in our face, spitting on us, yelling at us. My partners to this date are still dealing with that kind of things. Part of the reason why we're here, and a lot of West Coast people are here, is because of what happened out there during once COVID hit. Certain of the governors all of a sudden became very tyrannical, and they tried to shut down freedom of speech. They tried to shut down freedom of assembly. They tried to shut down freedom of religion. Okay, you can't go see your relatives during Thanksgiving. If you do, you're going to get criminally cited. And we as law enforcement officers are like, We have a problem with that. Well, that brings up a good point. One of the reasons why I'm running for sheriff is because we realized just how much power a governor has. We didn't know this. When I say we as a populace didn't understand that a governor is like a mini president. And the only entity, law enforcement wise, that could actually stand up against that is the sheriff, because he's constitutionally elected. And we had sheriffs that weren't standing up. We had chiefs that weren't standing up, and things like that. So one of the reasons why I'm running for sheriff is to ensure that that never happens.
Right.
Not on my watch. And then my job is to teach those behind me the same thing. To teach my replacement, so to speak. Right? And so, yes, classes are absolutely mandatory, even though we find them very yawning because you're going through PowerPoint and stuff like that. They're necessary. Absolutely necessary. And then add to that, the one thing I do see that's a shortfall here, and I'm not blaming anybody, because there could be budget, it could be resources, etc., is there is not enough training on use of force things. There's not enough gun training. There's not enough hands-on training. There's not enough de-escalation training. There's not enough observational training. There's not enough training of the officer to make them confident enough to where they can face every situation almost without thought.
Yeah.
On life or death situations.
Because I just wonder how many of the officers would know, what's the 5 elements of the First Amendment.
I just named most of them.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. That, the other thing is about the separation of powers clause. Seems like everything here kind of melds together, and I think
sounds like
it can be problematic.
Absolutely. Well, you're actually seeing problems. Your examples, I'm assuming, is what is happening here. That's where you're drawing your examples from, and you're seeing the problems of that already.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think what we're going to try to do is to make it, while we're involved with this broadcast, where people, if they give us their name, we'll take questions from the public. Duke, is that something?
I'm cool with that. It should pop up in the comments if they want to make a comment, and I see the comment, we'll ask the question. I did, in the meantime, you mentioned that part of what you did in Special Forces was build relationships with the communities that you went to. How do you see your role in building relationships with the community here? Because that's important in local law enforcement.
Well, I see two separate communities, worlds, actually. So Jasper is one world by itself. 3, actually. Kimball is a world by itself. South Pittsburgh is a world by itself. And I'm not mentioning Whitwell, which is important, and Orem, and all these other communities out here. I'm mentioning these because they're on the same road.
Yes.
Okay, so I've seen this division, and I hear it about some football, long-standing football division and stuff. And I totally understand that. I do. But I see it go into other realms. And there's a problem with that. The last time that I saw communities throughout this country come together was right after those towers fell. Man, the camaraderie, the unity that created was just, it was awe-inspiring, okay? And that's when I got sucked back into the military and left, okay? And knowing that the people were just so about everything and together about everything. Nowadays, everything's about division. Everything is about division. And the problem with that is, why are we being divided? Why? The question is why? Why are we allowing ourselves to be divided? Okay? And I'm not about division. If you want a community to go forward, it has to be united. And what's funny is, and I just noticed this, my wife and I were walking down our street. I live on the street with the Hatfields and McCoys, and that's no kidding. There's property for sale for the Hatfields, and property for sale from McCoys. And guess what? They're on the same side of the street. Right?
Yeah.
The longest standing rivalry amongst families is the Hatfield McCoys. Sure. And my street shows that they're together now, right?
You're going to get a lot of pressure, I think, or people are going to say, well, he wasn't born here. He's an outsider. How would you deal with that?
First of all, I would say you're right. You're absolutely right. I was not born here. My father, though, is from Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was an ambulance driver in Chattanooga. My family, he was estranged from my family. I just learned about this, no kidding, like 4 weeks ago. He was at the age 12. And he was raised by a coach until he illegally recruited or joined the Navy for the Korean War. But my grandfather was a bootlegger, moonshiner in these hills somewhere. I have an uncle who I think he's passed. And I say I think because my father, I only met them one time when my dad drove me from Colorado, where I was born, to Marion Military Institute in Marion, Alabama, where I went to school initially. So I met my family one time, and I have an uncle, his name is Kenneth Burnette, who, you know the white plantation looking house as you're leaving Jasper on Highway 41 before you get there? There's a neighborhood right back there. There's a house that's registered to his name.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And supposedly I have a cousin in Jasper. His name is Marcus. So I'm not from here. My roots are from here. But more importantly, I'll answer your question with an example. Let's say you have a pond, okay, on the water, and there is no outside water that comes in this pond. Rain can't touch it, streams can't touch it, it's just a pond, okay? And that sun shines every day, day in and day out. What happens to that water? It stagnates. It decreases, and it becomes toxic. You can't drink from it, okay? But what happens if you introduce an outside source of water? And that water can recycle. Some flows out, while other flows in. That water now is potable, and it sustains life. Okay? So to answer your question, having an outsider come in is actually a good thing. And the reason for that is you bring in fresh ideas, new experiences, and allows the department to grow. And I don't mean just the sheriff's department. I'm talking any other governmental entity. It can be the education board. It can be a police department. It doesn't matter. You bring outside knowledge in, it does nothing but help the community grow. And another thing I'll use is my own department in Vancouver, Washington. My city was considered small. It was about 100,000 people. We had about, I can't remember for sure, but somewhere between 50 and 80 officers, sworn officers. Within 5 years, our city started to grow rapidly. And they were behind the times. I could see that it was small town mentality and things, but they were coming across issues of a bigger city, and they didn't know how to really deal with that. We started getting chiefs from the outside, and some worked out well, some didn't. But more importantly, we started bringing officers in, and those officers are the ones that help evolve this department into a more modern department. With problem-solving abilities and equipment ideas and things like that. Yeah. And they're like a top-notch department now.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Great answer.
The Army's the same way. So let's use a Special Forces team, okay? It's a captain, that's the team leader, and then you have up to 11 NCOs, sergeants, that are on the team. They have their own specialties. Well, eventually those sergeants promote, and your senior sergeant is your team sergeant. Okay. Eventually, those sergeants, if they stay in, they want to become a team sergeant. Well, that sergeant cannot become a team sergeant of that team he was on, because he develops relationships with these men, and he may have to make decisions that affect these men that he may not want to do because he's friends with them.
Right.
He knows their families,
Right.
etc. So the Army moves them out and puts them in charge of other places. It's the same thing with officers.
That makes a lot of sense, really,
Yep.
because then there's no bias. It's,
Right.
It's not there. One thing that I do want to make sure the public knows, we're doing this, Duke and myself, to make sure that the public gets an opportunity to meet every candidate.
Yes.
Whether they're Democrat, Libertarian, Independent, what have you, Republican. So the goal is, when you cast your precious vote, you'll know the candidate that you definitely want to vote for.
That's right.
So that's why we're doing this.
Nothing's worse than walking into the polling booth and there's a list of names and you don't know some of them.
Right, right.
And you got to make a decision. Of
And
how
then
to
you're
vote.
only looking for D.
Yeah, and then you're
or
only
R,
looking for D or R.
and,
Yeah.
or independent.
Yeah.
And so I think what we're both looking forward to is to have every candidate. We welcome
Yes.
every candidate to come, whether Democrat, Independent, Libertarian. I don't know if there's any Libertarians, but I throw that in there anyhow. And Republican to come and this wasn't so bad, was it? We didn't beat you up too
No,
bad.
I was, yeah, no.
So, but thank you.
And thank you all for joining us, and you have a good night. And I believe we have another interview set up for Thursday night. Is that correct? Okay, so join us again Thursday night at 6 for Marion County Hardball. Good night.